Good morning, everybody. We're back for another episode of Fatherhood Unplugged. We're here with a special episode today. Here with Brian, as always, and we have a special guest. We're here with Hiram Sanchez.
Thanks for having me, guys. Hiram Sanchez. New dad, brand new dad. Have a 6-month-old baby girl. Her name is Pepper. I don't necessarily know where you guys want to start, but I can give you my kind of initial thoughts, and maybe we can spiral from there. My journey is a little bit different, I think, than other people's journeys. Where like I never wanted to be a dad, ever. I was very much like, I'm good. Like I'm Uncle Hiram. You know, Uncle Hiram's cool. Uncle Hiram doesn't have to do diapers. Uncle Hiram doesn't have to, run to all these appointments. And it got to the point where my wife and we were looking at our our birthdays, and it's like, we're approaching 40 here real quick. And so if this is ever going to be a thing, we need to do it now. And it was one of those things too where I was very much like, we met later in life, right? And so I wanted to have that time to enjoy both of us being married and going out and like vacationing and all that stuff. And we didn't get a lot of that time. So we're like, well, let's pull the goalie and see what happens. And if it happens, it happens. And if not, then great. And it wasn't happening for a while. So I was like, winning, I guess. And then surprise, surprise, I'll never forget when Katie came down and told me we had been, I don't know, I'd been out. I don't know. I knew I was hungover on the couch in the basement, and she came down with the test. She's like, babe, look. And I remember exactly what I said. I said, yay, you did it. And I went back to sleep. And ever since then, it's been the journey. The pregnancy journey leading up to Pepper being here was something tough to watch, especially first trimester. Just seeing your wife going through just the horribleness of someone's body changing and preparing to grow a life and then deliver it. But I don't know. Now that Pepper's here, right now that we're 6 months in, it's only now that I'm starting to enjoy little moments every single day with her. And I think that the difficult thing for me throughout this whole process is that I never really had a good connection point with her, right? She's here. Of course, I love her. Of course, I'm responsible for her. Of course, I want to take care of her. But I still didn't feel like there was like she cared about me, I guess, is what I would think of it. Because Katie was in love moment number one. She's like, yep. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, like, I love her too. Like, I'm not gonna like just not take care of her. But I didn't have any connection. So it was really difficult when she was keeping me up at night. And it was really difficult when I couldn't console her and this stuff. And all of those moments back to back to back, I felt like this is why I didn't want to be a dad. And now I'm here and now I'm trapped. Right. And so that was a hard, like the first 3 months were really difficult because she's cute. Yeah, she does all these little things, but they were few and far between. And I'm like, everyone says, oh, it's just the first 3 months and it's worth it. I'm like, not worth it to me. This, the juice isn't worth the squeeze for me right now. Like, and that was tough. And there's still stuff that I'm just kind of like trying to process, but it's absolutely when she hit around 3 months and she was able to like recognize me and throw me a smile, that's when the switch kind of flipped for me. That's what started. It wasn't like a whole about face. Let me be very clear about that. I still have days where I'm just like, just tell me what you want. Just tell me what you want. But now like just hearing her laugh or hearing her giggle or just like watching her learn things in the span of a week, right? Just like you show her something on Monday and then by Thursday she's just doing it. And like those little things that no one told me about, I'm like, okay, I guess there is some juice to squeeze here, right? Like and like I'm very much enjoying what's happening now with me and Pepper. So I don't know. You have any? I don't know where to jump off from there. I guess that's where I'm at. Like a couple of things that like I have like learned about myself for sure. is that I need to go to therapy and I need to talk to somebody. Because now I'm starting to think like there are things about me that I need to talk to somebody who doesn't know me about, right? To give me like good advice, because I am now terrified to pass those things on unintentionally to my kids, to Pepper, right? And so it's also given me a lot of like just like
Self-awareness.
yes about like, hey, like, you know, take care of your stuff. It's okay to take care of your stuff. And I like growing up, I always had like this limelight about my parents. I'm like, oh, they're perfect. And I remember when I realized like, oh, they're just people, right? And like, and then I started thinking about like, oh man, I got this from mom, and that wasn't their fault, right, at all. And I don't hold any grudges, but like now I'm like aware of that, and I'm just like, oof, I need to I need to get some stuff in order to make sure that I can give Pepper the best chance to be the best person she can be, you know. But
So I got some curiosity questions. Brian,
Yeah.
you wanna go in? I'm kind of curious what about those first 3 months, but I'll let you go, Brian.
I think you bring an interesting like perspective, like, and it's a very honest perspective. And I know for the first 18 months were like that, where like I connected with him and he was cool, but like he was hard. He was the hardest baby. Like I never got more than 3 hours of sleep for the first 18 months. And he'd be cool, like, but it was just, I didn't realize how hard it was going to be a parent. Like, and I didn't know how to do a lot of the stuff. I figured it out pretty quick, but it's that always feeling exhausted. And like, if you're not the preferred parent, like for us, it was a little bit the other way with my first kid. He preferred dad and like mom, like he's like, and like she had a lot of that. And sometimes there can be resentment between partners on that. And we knew each other for a long time because we were high school sweethearts, but we definitely weren't prepared for a lot of, you know, like, hey, like now there's this third person involved that you can't just be like, hey, go home. Like we need some time.
yeah.
So I think you called some really, really important stuff on just like, you know, it's hard. Like the first 3 months, 6 months, if you get an amazing child like I did, 18 months, it could just be really, really rough. So I think like calling that out and being honest with yourself is really important, especially behind like, you know, before you have kids, because I have some people who jumped into it and they're like, oh, like it'll be fine. And all of a sudden they're like, this is not fine. I'm drowning. So
Well,
yeah.
and that's another point that I want to bring up is that like Katie and I talk to each other, right? And that was one of the first things that like when we got married, I was like, we need to talk to each other. And we from like the first couple months we started dating, I told her I'm like, I never want children. And she's like, well, I don't think I can have children, so we're on the same page. I'm like, great. But then we got married and then we got closer to 40 and she's like, well, I just want to try. And it's been really hard for me not to like, I'll tell you what, those first 3 months, like when I wasn't sleeping and I was bouncing her and I was getting scoliosis because I was bouncing too much, and it was like I was just in pain for weird reasons, probably because I'm just old. And I would sit there and be like, this is Katie's fault. I'm angry right now and this is Katie's fault. And like that is crazy talk, right? Like that's not true. But those are the thoughts that entered my brain at 2:45 in the morning on a Wednesday when Pepper's screaming. And like, and another part of the stuff that we talked about before, and she's like, well, why don't you want to have kids? And I mean, the list is very long, but one of the things that I told her that I'm still struggling with is I don't know how to balance being a dad, being myself, and then being a husband, right? Because it's like dad, and then at the end of the day, I'm just like, all right, I want to go game, or I want to go 3D print, or I want to go paint, and like I'm neglecting husband duties, right? And it's like I don't want to do that. I want to like chill out and do my stuff, right? And then sometimes I'll do husband duties, and then I don't no time for me. And when I get time for me, I just sit here and I'm like, well, I'm too tired, or I'm too tired to be a husband. And it's very difficult and it's frustrating because while in some of those moments I do want to be selfish and I just want to do what I want to do, I still like internally feel bad that I'm leaving husband duties to the side, because I know that doesn't make Katie feel great, and I know that she's also exhausted as well. So we never really fought through our entire relationship until we had until we had Pepper, and like the lack of sleep was really difficult for both of us. Luckily now Pepper is sleeping a lot more, and as that's happened, the arguments have like dropped significantly. So we have all both been able to acknowledge that and said, hey, take a nap, like we need, you know, you need to go sleep, I got this. And it's really prevented, I believe, like unnecessary huge blowups that could have occurred between us. And I don't know, I'm just really thankful for her dealing with calling me out on my BS when needed, and just that we talk, right? And that we're both comfortable being like, eat a Snickers or whatever, you know what I mean? So
for me, I think I relate, not completely to your story, but I think I told you I have two of my own. I have Jace is 2 and 7 months about, and then I have Cammy, and she's 15 months. She just had her 15-month checkup. I think for Jace, I think we had a similar situation to you. We believe a lot in, we're a spiritual family. We are primarily Buddhist in our family, and the year 2020 was a big year for a lot of Buddhists and people looking to have children, because that year doesn't come around very often. Just because it was a very symmetrical year and things like that, and that's the year we had Jace, and that's what we tried to do. So she was asking me, kind of similar to you, like, let's try to have a kid in 2020. And it was kind of a similar situation to you. I was like, okay, we'll do it. I don't think I had a strong desire to have children at that point. I think we were probably married for a little over a year, and I don't know if I was quite ready in our marriage to do that. I think I was probably ready as a person. I think at that point I was always Uncle Van too. I was always the one to go play, but I didn't have to bring anybody home, you know. Mm-hmm. So that was the part that I enjoyed. And then, but I always compared myself for some reason to my sisters, because my sisters at that point were they're a little bit older than me. My second closest to me is 3 years, and then next one after that is 6 years. And I had children before both of them. And the one that's 6 years away from me hasn't had children yet, and the one 3 years away from me has had a child. And that actually surprised me. The one that was closest to me did, because her stance on having kids was a lot similar to yours, but maybe for different reasons. But I don't know all of your reasons. But she was at the point where you are maybe at now. She didn't know if she was going to be a fit parent. She didn't know if she was going to be able to raise a person to be the best they can be. And she didn't really want that responsibility. So when she did have children, that was very surprising to me. So I don't think it's completely surprising with what you're saying. But for me, I think it's very similar, but I think you putting it how you put it, it was very articulate. I think there are times that I've had that with Jace as well, some of the things that you were saying, because I don't think it was a complete choice of my own that I was doing. I think I did say yes to it. I think there's a topic that we may have wanted to talk about on this podcast, Brian, that maybe you were sometimes kind of a yes dad kind of thing. It's like, okay, we're going to go through with this, but do we really want it to happen? So I think there were nights for sure that maybe I was thinking that, but maybe it's like, no, I can't think that way, because I already, like, this is something I agree to, and something that I know that I can do, because I always was a great uncle in my eyes, and from my nephews and nieces, they always said I was a great uncle, and I knew I could do it. But I mean, that was at a certain point. We were always up, and it's like, oh, you're kind of by yourself in your own thoughts with this kid that's crying. It's like, oh, what happened kind of thing. So
You're so
I
mad right now.
and then it gets real different when you have another one, because with Cammy, it was a whole different situation because we didn't plan for her, and she was a surprise, and it was a lot more natural because of that. And
Interesting.
for Cammy, and it was a lot easier because she also recently had a surgery in December of last year, where I couldn't help but just love her as much as possible. And with Jace, like he's primarily healthy. He's developed pretty well. But for Cammy, it's just every time I look at her, it's just I can't help but just love her. And I think it's just different with Jace. I kind of have to remember to love on him, kind of thing. And sometimes I
But they're
feel
different.
yeah, sometimes I feel guilty about that, but I think that's kind of the father daughter thing as well. Uh, but I'm
Boys are
curious.
different. 100%. Boys are
Yeah.
different.
But I'm curious, Hiram, where are you now? How are things changing now? What are kind of things that you wanna work on and improve with yourself? I think there's some things that you talked about actually just in our prior episode that we're myself and Brian are still working through. It's called dad guilt that you were just kind of talking about. But yeah, where do you kind of see yourself in, I don't know, the next year or so, and what's the perfect world for you, even though we'll probably never get to a perfect world.
The perfect world is winning the Powerball and retiring and then just hanging out and then just paying someone to hang out when they're crying. Like that's the perfect that's the perfect world. No, I think the journey is still long, right? I'm still really new into this. And I think that one, just like I had mentioned before, as uh Pepper sees something on Monday and learns it on Thursday, I feel like I'm very much in the same thing where like what works now might not work in 2 weeks, or how I feel now might be magnified, or I might have a completely different feeling in a month or so. And like one of the things one of the new things that's about to happen with her is eating food, right? Like eating actual food. And that has very much brought to the surface for me that I'm going to be a helicopter parent and I need to stop, because like when I'm seeing her like grab stuff, I'm like, oh, don't choke. Oh, gotta get that. I just need to get out of her way and just let her learn, right? And just let her develop. And it's very difficult for me because like I just want to make sure, and it might be the insurance brain in me, or it might be just me being the fun police, but I'm just like, no, don't do that. Like, well, if you do that, this could happen. So let's stay away from it completely. Right. And like all of that stuff. And it goes back to me not passing stuff on to her. Like, I need to just let her be her and kind of like enjoy the ride a little bit. And it's a struggle for me. It's not fun. It's not just like for sleeping right now. We're kind of just letting her cry it out, and it's not fun to just let her like watch her on the monitor and roll around and be upset, because you do want to go in there and be like, it's fine, I got you, you're good. But then they're not learning, and it's like you're not doing them any favors. And that's, so I think right now that's the current difficult thing for me, is to not like overstep in when I don't need to be stepping in on stuff like that. But things I am looking forward to, I am looking forward to her to eat. I'm looking forward to her for throwing the food on the ground, so then the dogs and her can finally be friends, right? Because I know that as soon as that happens, the dogs aren't going to treat her like an obstacle, and they're going to treat her like a person. And she's started to like notice them and wanting to pet them, and they're kind of receptive as well, so there's no worries there. But yeah, I think the next 3 to 6 months are going to be are ones that I'm actually looking forward to as we head into the holiday season. She'll be crawling around and she'll be close to 1 and hitting all those milestones. But yeah, if I were to fast forward, Van, things that I'm not looking forward to: hanging out with parents that I don't know, taking them to sporting events and having to talk to parents I don't know, having other people's kids over at my house that I don't like. Like all of those things that I don't have to worry about now, I'm secretly worrying about in the back of my brain. And I'm just like, okay, here we go. But yeah, I don't know.
I think
It's wild. And like it's like a Rubik's cube in my head, honestly. Like sometimes I have it figured out and then I wake up and somebody scrambled it for me. I'm like, oh man, like I had this figured out. What happened? Who did this? And like Pepper just snuck in my room and undid it, and then it went back in her room. You know what I mean? Like that's how it feels sometimes. But
That doesn't go away.
oh good.
Good way to
Okay,
put
I
it.
can't
I
wait.
haven't heard that yet. Yeah.
Let me throw that out for you right now.
one of the last things I'll leave you with, I guess on this topic or whatever, is that, and one last thing that like I identified myself that I need to work on is that I'm quick to be frustrated, and I'm quick to be like angry, and it's not like a violent anger. It's just like a frustration where like I just want to kick a pillow or something like that. And like I'll hold her, and if she's unconsolable for the first 5 minutes, I'm just like, all right, well, we need a new baby. This one's broken. Like I don't understand. Right. And so one of the things that like I have been doing prior to Pepper being here that I didn't realize was helping me was like 3D printing and painting, because it requires a great amount of patience, and like you screw up a lot, and like the printer will break, you have to calibrate it, and it takes forever to figure it out. When you're painting, you could screw it up, the thing could tip over and break, and then you have to figure out how to glue it and make it look nice, and it takes a lot of patience. And I've been able to take that and kind of apply it over to like other things, which I think has been pretty therapeutic. So yeah.
I like it.
Bring you a follow up.
I think it's like some of the things like are interesting that you bring up, and the way I do things a little different. I think I parent different than a lot of people. I look at, and this is easy, like, because with food and stuff and wanting to like helicopter, I've always looked at what can I do to let them do something that is risky, but how can we make it like kind of safe? Like Jordan Peterson has a quote about it: let them do dangerous things as safely as possible. And I've kind of always done that with them. And again, I started with a boy who was just a real pain in my butt when he was real little, and then he's been like a machine ever since. But I mean, like even like yesterday, we were at Devil's Lake, and I'm staying with all the other parents in our family, and there was a kid up the tree, like not like 10 feet off the ground, but like probably a little more than. And all the other kids are like, go higher, and they're like, whose kid is that? I thought, it's my kid. They're like, you gonna give down? I was like, well, no. I was like, he's pretty capable, and makes a bad decision, like then we'll deal with it then. So I think it's always kind of how can you train them, and I say train because I think it is the correct term, to be as capable as possible so that they can do some and have some shenanigans and be okay. How can they get into a situation and be capable of physically and mentally problem solving their way out? And then sometimes you will have to help them. Like I've definitely I pulled a kid out of a tree. I've also had to climb up a tree and be like, you know what? I'm too old for this. Why am I up here? So I mean, like it's just I've always kind of pushed them to, what is the most you can do? What is it? And that turns really fun. I really enjoy that process with my kids. So eventually they'll start to surpass you. So I would say if you don't want that to happen, start some physical training now. It can definitely happen quicker than you think, depending on the kind of kid that you have. So
yeah. I think that's something that I've also thought about. I don't know what quote from some person I took it from, but it's basically let your kid have an imagination as a kid as long as possible. Don't make them be an adult faster than possible. One of the things that I've done recently that are probably scarier for other people. I've let when Jace reaches for scissors, I let him learn how to use it. I like show him like, okay, this is how you cut it, and then I let him hold it. Whereas I don't know if I would have done that completely I don't know if it's been a few months ago, but probably like a year ago when he was 1. So I'm just kind of looking at dangerous things differently. So how can I show them how to use it, or show them how to be safe in the situation where there's dangerous things? And I think it's just I can take scissors from him when he's like 21 years old, but that's not gonna help him, right? So I need to show him how
You
to
should.
cut his own food, kind of thing. So that's the way I think. I mean, I don't know if I would be able to let him crawl up a tree or anything like that as much as Brian could. But
Yeah, my kids are a little bit older, but
right, and I don't know if I would have to be very confident in Jace if he's like 13 or 11 or whatever, as much as you are in Braden. But
you just put your kid on the monkey bars, and you'll get over that real quick.
yeah,
They'll take some diggers for it, and you'll be like, oof.
yeah, we'll see. I think
that kind of like makes me think though, like think back to my childhood. How many times did I skin my knee? How many I got stitches? Like I did this. I did dumb stuff. Like, and I'm all the better for it. You know what I mean? And it doesn't help me not be a helicopter or not be over, but that's where like, and that's this is a good example of like when I have to lean into Katie, right? Like she is so good about like she's a nanny, she's done childcare forever, and I am so lucky to have her as a partner going through this journey, because there are a lot of times where I'm just like trying to overdo something. She's like, stop, just like trust me on this. And like it's hard for me to let go of that, because I will tell you that I'm not a control freak, and that's Fred out lie, because I like to control everything. And so allowing like just having that trust in her to just like, all right, I know she's got this, she's done it a billion times, and her being able to just like call me out on it. And I couldn't be going through this with anyone else. Like this is Katie and I'm just really happy to have her with me, because I would be more of a mess, a catastrophe without her. So yeah, so I don't know if she would let Pepper just run with scissors, but and I'm putting words in your mouth because you didn't say you'd let him run with scissors.
yeah, we don't.
but yeah, no, Katie is she's exactly what I needed in order to survive this journey.
Yeah, there's definitely some habits that I have left over from my single life, and I think that's something from how you're talking and what you're doing. If as long as you're aware of it and you're willing to change it, you'll change it. I think the hardest part is just saying it out loud and knowing it's something you want to change. I wouldn't go as far as saying it's a problem or anything like that, but those things, as long as you're aware of them and trying to change, they'll change. And I would say that for me, they're a struggle to change, but if you keep at it and you know that this is how it's going to need to be for your kids to grow, for your relationship to grow, every single change is going to make your relationship change. And I think some people don't realize that when they do have kids, that you need to grow with the relationship. You just can't have it stagnant. So everything's going to be different, but different hopefully in a good and better way. But I there was one question that I said that I was going to ask you that I didn't. What does it mean for you to be a dad, Hiram?
I mean, that's a pretty loaded question.
Yeah, it is.
That's why we like it.
Well, I've only been able to be a dad for about 6 months, right? And I only really feel like I've actually earned the title of dad maybe over the last 6 weeks, right? With maybe 2 months with Pepper. But when I think about like what it means to be a dad, immediately my mind goes to just like the basics, right? Like make sure you got diapers, make sure you're fed, blah, 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 just take care of it. But then when I start thinking about it a little bit more, I start thinking about like my childhood and all of the things that that I've done growing up, and how that's affected other people, and how I wish I would have been better, right, in certain instances, and how I want to prepare Pepper for, you know, the world she's going to grow up in, which is going to be different than I grew up in, right? And so like I just want, at the end of the day, for her to know that she is loved unconditionally by her mom and dad and her family. And I feel like being a dad is just being able to be there for her whenever she needs you, no matter what, right? And the first time I've kind of felt that way was like, we've been doing routines with her now for her to go to sleep, and I kind of do story time, and I read her books and trying to figure out which books she likes, and you know, what, some of them have textures, she likes to touch them, and some pictures and stuff like that. But she was pretty unconsolable, and we were in a rocking chair, and I was trying to like get her to calm down. And a lot of times when she cries too much, I'm like, all right, time to cry it out, and I just walk out of the room. But like she was just like crying, and she looked up at me, and I was kind of like reading to her, and she kind of like calmed down, and she kind of like smiled, and then she kind of like dozed and went and fell asleep in my arms. And it was the first time that's ever happened. And like for me, like I'm not really an emotional guy, but like the emotions were just firing off, and like in my brain I was like, maybe this is like the small example of like in the future when she's heartbroken or when she's hurting or something like that, and she just needs her dad, and I could just sit here and listen to her and not tell her what to do, and just listen until she's, you know, she just needs someone to be there for her. And I feel like in that moment I felt like dad for the first time, like truly for the first time. I don't know if that answers your question, but but yeah.
Well, I mean, my first reaction to that is, and how I try to come into interviews like this or people on the podcast, I try to never interrupt. I think that's something that I've learned. You try to listen as much as possible. Just every step you can take, just ask more, or tell me more, or something like that before ever trying to give advice. And I would always try to do that with my kids. That's something that I'll definitely try to do with my kids. But really, it doesn't particularly help giving advice as much as people think. It's really just the listening part, and then guiding people to an answer to hopefully help them and hopefully help them learn. And really, when people are just kind of spilling out their feelings as much as possible, they just really, whenever it happens to me, like I just want people to listen. I don't really want them to tell me what to do, kind of thing. So I was just gonna say, like, there's a couple things that maybe I was gonna tell you, Hiram, maybe this will help or this will help, but I would just say, if you ever want to come back and talk some more, or if you just want to text it out or have a different offline chat, I'll be here. I'm sure Brian would be open to another chat too.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that, and I appreciate like this podcast and like what it is an outlet for, right? Because like no one gives you the instruction manual when you leave the hospital. They check that the seat is up to standards, and they say have fun. And and it's given me like realization, and like this is a hot take. Not everyone should have children. Not everyone is mentally 100%. Prepared to have children, and it's one of those things where like it just, once you think you have it figured out, something new happens, or you get, you know, the Rubik's Cube gets scrambled, or no matter how many people say like, oh, this now this is going to happen and this is going to happen, it's different for everybody. And to your point, Van, like as a Puerto Rican, it's really hard for me not to interrupt people or try to finish people's sentences, because it's in our blood, and it's annoying, and I hate that I do it, but I do it. And everyone comes out of the woodwork when you have a kid to tell you like, oh, well, I did this, don't do this, or use this weird butt spatula thing that they sell at Bed Bath and Beyond, or whatever, that, you know, all these little gadgets that they try to push down your throat. But honestly, like, it's just, sometimes you just want to sit there and like, let me figure out my own kid, because to the earlier point, everyone is different, right? And so that was one of the frustrating things leading up to Pepper being here and right after her being here, is that like everyone was trying to tell Katie what to do, and Katie knows what to do and she doesn't want to be told what to do. And like these other people are just trying to be nice, right? Like, and they're trying to offer up their experiences that maybe like we can learn something for him. But like when they do that, then I have to hear Katie tell me, can you believe this person told me to do this? And I'm just like, you're not helping me in this situation by offering up all this unwarranted or unasked for advice. And for anyone listening out there, if you have a friend who is having a baby, when the baby's here, please do not show up at their house with all of your Goodwill bags and just drop them off and say, hey, I had 2 kids here, have all this stuff, whatever you want, just go take to Goodwill, because that's what happened to us. And that was not fun. It was not fun. Oh man. Yeah, it was like hippie Christmas at my front door. It was like everyone just dumping off all their stuff that they had. And I was like, I just want to sleep. And now I have to sort through all this stuff.
Yeah, my sisters did that.
So yeah. But yeah, again, I think this is a great outlet. There's a lot of feelings I didn't even know I could feel. And no one ever told me about them. And I think that like having people like you two that are willing to talk about it openly is great. I know that like I'm really hoping that like we could be the last generation of men who really don't like talk about feelings, or at least the first generation that addresses them head on, so that people don't have to feel like they can't talk about stuff. You know what I mean? It just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's something that is not, it's not talked about, and it's kind of like looked upon in a negative light. And I think that's kind of backwards. And so things like this are good steps forward, I think.
I would agree. That one actually like gets to me like quite a bit, because like how can you be great if you lock away all the stuff that's not perfect?
Right.
So I like this podcast because it gives everybody a chance to talk about like being a dad's not easy. Like it's not. But yet we're not incompetent either. So I love hearing about other people's experiences and knowing that some of the hard stuff that I've gone through, they've gone through, or I'm pretty blessed because, you know, I have other friends that have older kids than me, and I'll bug them and be like, hey, what is this? And then and then they'll be like, oh, that's normal, man. Don't worry about it. So yeah, no, I don't miss the baby stage. I'm not gonna lie to you, Hiram. Like my kids are older, and I see babies sometimes, and like they want to hold, like, you want to hold my baby? I was like, no.